Hi everyone, welcome to BRICS Briefs. Today we have the privilege to introduce a highly distinguished guest, Scott Ritter. For those who are not familiar with Mr. Ritter, he is a former US Marine Corps intelligence officer, former UN weapons inspector, and a truth-principled political analyst. Scott is a very popular figure on YouTube and a big fan of the BRICS project, so we couldn't miss having him here with us. With decades of experience in international security and disarmament, Scott has been at the forefront of some of our most critical global issues, from his work in Iraq during the 1990s to his insightful commentary on modern-day conflicts and diplomacy. Known for his candid perspectives and unwavering commitment to truth, Scott has authored several books and is a prominent voice in discussions on foreign policy, military strategy, and global peace. Today we'll chat with him about the complex dynamics shaping our world, including the evolving relationship between Russia and Iran, Turkey's growing influence as a regional power, and the shifting geopolitical landscape in the context of BRICS and beyond. Welcome to Think BRICS, Scott.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Welcome, Scott. Thank you for your time and thank you for your attention you gave to our channel. Thank you so much. In order not to waste so much time, let me start with the first question that is very interesting for me personally and for all Russians. I would like to ask you your opinion about Russia and Iran concluded strategic partnership lately. And it's interesting that among 49 paragraphs of the document, there is nothing written about military stuff, military cooperation. Actually, a lot of people, a lot of analysts, they were expecting especially something about military assistance, but exactly because lately in Syria, both Russia and Iran had some problems, we can say. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think we have to look at everything in a historical context. And Russia and Iran historically aren't bosom buddies. There's, a strained relationship that goes back centuries. And the idea that this would all be forgotten overnight and that Russia and Iran could enter into a comprehensive military-based strategic relationship was absurd facially. It just wasn't going to happen. Iran and Russia today are two nations that have been brought together because of shared concern over, I think, the hegemony of the United States and the behavior of the United States and the threat that the United States poses to both Russia and Iran. And so they now have common cause. I think they look at each other and they say, what is happening to you is happening to me. Maybe if we come together, we can avoid the consequences of American behavior and strengthen ourselves economically. Though that the principal vehicle of this cooperation is economic and political, not military. First of all, neither Russia nor Iran is looking for a military confrontation with the United States. I think there's a growing recognition that the United States is an empire that has reached its peak, and that it now will have to adjust to the new realities of the world. But just because this is an empire that's in decline doesn't mean that it's an empire that's weak. The United States still is the world's foremost military power, especially when it comes to the ability to project power beyond its shores. And a war with the United States, while undoubtedly costly to America, would be devastating, especially to a nation like Iran. And so the idea that and Russia's not looking for a war with the United States, because a war with the United States would invariably lead to a nuclear exchange and the destruction of everything. Neither Russia nor Iran are suicidal. And so I think anybody who thought that they were going to come together to create this military alliance to stand up to America, to confront the American hegemon, to stare down America, it wasn't going to happen. What they were going to do is to enter into a strategic relationship that strengthens them economically, because I think there's a growing recognition that the world going forward will be defined primarily in economic terms as opposed to military terms. The experience of the United States proves that there's a limit to military power. At some point in time, military power is driven by the economic engine underneath it. And if the economic engine isn't sound, the military power becomes just a burden on the nation. And so neither Russia nor Iran wanted to go down that path. There are things that can be done self-defense wise. We know that, for instance, Iran is providing Russia with technology related to Shahed 136 drones and maybe some other drone variations. We know that Russia is sending Su-35 Generation 4 fighters to Iran that will enhance S-400, surface-to-air missile batteries. So there is a military aspect to this cooperation, but the principal deal is to align Russia and Iran economically, geopolitically, and politically, and that's smart. That's and it's in keeping with the BRICS, the direction that BRICS is taking. Both Iran and Russia are members of BRICS, and so it only makes sense that if you're going to join this forum, that your foreign policies will reflect the values and the intent, the mission of this forum. BRICS is not a military alliance, and so why would Russia and Iran, both BRICS members, deviate from that strategic direction and suddenly enter into a military alliance that takes them nowhere?
Okay, so because many expected it would be something similar to a North Korean variant. I mean, about the strategic partnership, because Russia and North Korea, they have signed the document where there are paragraphs about military cooperation. So many expected it would be something similar with Iran. Also.
Right. Well, North Korea faces a completely different situation. North Korea is at war with South Korea. Never forget that. A state of war still exists. North Korea is at war with the United States. Completely different. North Korea has nuclear weapons. North Korea is in a situation where a conflict with the United States, Japan, or South Korea would become a nuclear conflict that would impact Russia detrimentally. Has anybody taken a look at the flight path that American missiles would take if they were called upon to strike North Korea? They would overfly Russian territory. This would trigger a Russian response. Annie Jacobson just wrote a book about it, Nuclear War as Scenario, where that reality of American missiles overflying Russian territory led to, precipitated a larger nuclear conflict. I think the strategic problem that Russia faces with North Korea is far different than the strategic problem Russia faces regarding Iran. And so, given the fact that North Korea is a problem that's largely defined by its military, not by the economy, the military would take a would take a lead to the military solution. So I think it's just two totally different problem sets. And we also need to remember that there's a history there. Again, history matters. You have Soviet pilots flying combat missions in support of North Korea during the war, Soviet advisors, Soviet equipment. There's a long history there, whereas the history between Russia and Iran is far different. The Iranians are reticent. If you remember early on in the Russian intervention in Syria, the Russians were given overflight rights to fire their Caliber missiles from the Caspian Sea. But then when Russia sought to move aircraft into Iranian bases and the Iranians gave them permission, the backlash in Iran when Russian planes were operating, they said, no, you can't do that. So the mindsets are completely different. It's unrealistic to speak of a Russian-Iranian military strategic relationship at this time. And it takes them in the wrong direction. Russia's goal with Iran is not to facilitate Iranian acquisition of nuclear weapons. It's the exact opposite. Russia is a signatory to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and nuclear nonproliferation is very much a realistic part of Russia's foreign policy. And so, it's a more complicated relationship between Russia and Iran than many people maybe realize.
Okay, it's interesting. Yes, because, actually, personally, myself, I was expected this military stuff in this document, because actually, even in the Western media, some of them describe that document like something dangerous is coming out of Russia and Iran making an agreement together. We should be afraid of, and so on. And
something dangerous did come out. Something dangerous did come out. Russia and Iran are closer today than they have ever been before. And the thing that unites them is a common purpose towards economic growth. What's the principal weapon that the West uses against Russia and Iran today?
Sanctions.
Bingo. Economic warfare. And the Russians and the Iranians are coming together to overcome that, to defeat the principal weapon used by the West against it. And the Western sanctions will fail. That is an outcome that Russia and Iran could never achieve through military strength. In fact, if they moved in the direction of a military relationship, they would only strengthen the hand of the sanctions. But by focusing on economic cooperation and integration, they're ensuring the defeat of the West's strategic objectives. So something very dangerous from a Western perspective did come out of this treaty. It's something that it just proves that the Russians and the Iranians are playing a completely different game than the West. And they're going to win. Yeah,
that's BRICS. That's the different game in town. That's where it's
Time will show. Time will show.
We're optimistic. So I've prepared a question. It's a fairly long question, Scott. So sorry. Hopefully you can just.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just be here to take notes, because I have a.
Please.
I have a 63-year-old man's memory, and sometimes I'm like, go ahead.
Okay, we're testing you. So Alex Craner, who's a trading analyst, funnily enough, and a former Croatian soldier during the old Yugoslavia days, he joined us before a couple of weeks ago to chat about what's been going on in Syria. He reckons there's been some kind of secret deal between Russia, Iran, Assad of Syria, and even Turkey to let the rebels in the country, like a strategic move, like Russia against Hitler or Napoleon. We don't disagree too much, but we'd be interested to know what you think. Do you see any parallels between the US withdrawals from Afghanistan and Russia and Iran's reduced involvement in Syria? Any lessons to be learned from these shifts?
Well, as a student of Russia and Iran, and I say that as a student, meaning I'm not a professor. I'm not a professor emeritus who can sit here and quote, and I've written 15 PhD theses. I'm a student, so I'm learning. But I've studied this. It's very difficult to find examples of nations entering secret deals where they lose, where they suffer strategic defeat. I've studied history a lot, and fact is, I can't find any examples of a secret deal where a nation says, okay, I'm going to conspire so that we lose strategically. And Iran has come out, the head of the IRGC has come out and said, we got beat in Syria. This is a major defeat. The idea that Iran willingly did this is, I think, absurd. And the idea that Russia willingly did this is absurd. I'm a fan of, instead of conspiracies, which a secret deal inherently would be, I'm a fan of human frailty. What I mean by that is humans make mistakes. I'm also a fan of incompetence theory. And I think we look at what happened, we're still learning. I think both Russia and Iran are trying to figure out exactly what happened. It's my belief that the government of Bashar al-Assad contributed to its own demise by failing to be willing to make the changes necessary to deal with the realities of the situation. That after the Russian and Iranian intervention, I think everybody is focused on the Russian intervention in 2015 without giving sufficient weight to the Iranian intervention. In fact, it was Qasem Soleimani who flew to Russia in the summer of, I think, 2015 and made the case for Russian intervention. So that the Iranians were already there, and they were saying, we need more help to prevent the black flag of Islam from flying over Damascus. And I want to emphasize that point because, again, I'm a historian. I study things. And I look at a map and I look where Syria is. I look at, some of the population makeup in Syria, Circassians, people that come from the southern and northern Caucasus constitute this, the interplay of religion. And it brings to mind the Chechen conflicts in Russia in the 1990s and the early 2000s. And I had the honor and privilege of being able to travel to Chechnya and meet with the Chechen leadership. Ramzan Kadyrov, I went to the museum that honored the relationship between his father, Ahmad Kadyrov, and Vladimir Putin as they brought an end to this conflict that nobody could ever think. I mean, my goodness, we go back and is it Pushkin who wrote about the ability of the Chechens to hate the Russians? And I mean, we're talking about, this isn't a recent phenomenon. We're talking about a cultural conflict that goes back centuries and has been resolved. But it's been resolved only through the hard work of people who said, we will not allow religion to divide us. That it's important that we contain the passions of religion, both Orthodoxy and Islam. And the last thing Russia needs is Islamic fundamentalism to raise the black flag over Damascus and provide a safe haven for the very religious ideologies, extremism that they sought to defeat and suppress. It's still a problem in Russia to pretend that Islam isn't a problem in Russia. And I don't mean that the Muslim faith, I'm talking about extremism. I'm talking about the ability of Islamic extremists to take advantage of Russia's large Muslim population and create internal problems. It's something that the West has sought to use to its advantage in the past. Vladimir Putin speaks about it often, but the West ignores it. The role played by the CIA in, helping send Wahhabism and, foreign Islamic extremism into Chechnya to further this conflict. So I don't believe Russia would ever in a million years enter into a secret deal that empowered the very forces Russia sacrificed so much to suppress. I think what happened is this situation rapidly devolved out of control. Both Russia and Iran predicted this. Both Russia and Iran apparently were advising Bashar al-Assad to undertake different policy directions, both in terms of the security, but also in the management of the country. But Bashar al-Assad, first of all, his hands were tied. Remember, he inherited a very difficult political situation when his father died. Bashar al-Assad didn't build the system that he inherited. He inherited a system that was resistant to any change. And no sooner than he tried to implement changes, I think around 2005, then a drought hits in 2006, a drought that devastates the Syrian countryside, a drought that he wasn't prepared for, his government wasn't prepared for, and his government came under heavy criticism by the rural segments of the Syrian population who left their farms and came to the city seeking help, couldn't get the help. This created, domestic unrest that outside forces took advantage of. The Saudis came in, invested money, but also injected religious extremism into the mix. Then the Arab Spring brings about a Western-backed revolution, thinking they could topple Assad. It led to, 4 years of bloody fighting where they almost succeeded. That prompted the Russian intervention to prop him up. But at no time in this difficult struggle was there a moment for Bashar al-Assad to say, hey, let's reform democracy, let's build opposition parties, let's make Syria a viable nation state. He was still dealing with the corruption of the system he inherited from his father and the power structures that were there that he now had to yield to survive. And so he survives this. And now the Russians and the Iranians are saying, hey, now that we brought about some stability, how about doing that change? And I think Bashar al-Assad said, nah, I'm sort of comfortable with what I got here. And I'm going to turn to the Arab League and we're going to try and reintegrate ourselves in there so that, and it was the wrong direction because the Arab League wasn't interested in the survival of Bashar al-Assad. They were interested in continuing their strategic direction of undermining Syrian civil society or in the Syrian government, and they achieved their objective. Assad bought into something, created a shell of a government, a house of cards that at the first bluff came down. And the Russians and Iranians, I think, predicted this. They saw this. They were powerless to stop it. But this isn't about a deal. I think the reason why the secret deal comes up is in the end, Turkey, which plays a very major role in empowering HTS and the Syrian National Army and these other elements in Idlib province and elsewhere, again, history matters. Go back to the Astana process and tell me who was the top dog in Astana. Who whistled and who healed? Putin whistled, Turkey healed. Putin said, come, and Turkey came. And suddenly, Turkey found itself in a position where they weren't the one being whistled to, where they were in charge and people were turning to Turkey. The deal was that the Russians and the Iranians said, Assad, if you want to survive, you've now got to listen to Turkey. You've got to bring Turkey. But that was only at the very end. That's not a secret deal. It was happening right in front of our eyes, I think in Oman, where the discussions were taking place. So there was no secret deal. This was just a situation where Assad didn't have what it took, wasn't willing to do what was necessary. And Russia and Iran both suffered strategic defeats. When you suffer a strategic defeat, though, you try and mitigate the harm. And I think Russia's playing the game of catch up, trying to repair, trying to adjust, and Iran's doing the same thing. Turkey, on the other hand, is the winner, the big winner in all this, but not because of a secret deal.
Well, actually, as soon as you are talking about Turkey, before all that situation in Syria came to its end, we did not hear about Turkey like a major player in the Middle East. It was always in the shadow, somewhere. Everyone knew that Turkey is there, but not like it came out now. It's bright power that we see that Erdogan builded his influence. And so what do you expect from Turkey now? And you know that Turkey is bid for BRICS as well. So will Erdogan be able to manage his stance with the USA and NATO? Because Turkey is a NATO member and commercial profit from BRICS.
Well, first of all, when you say Turkey was there, I mean that's like saying a bear is there. A bear is big, and
But it was
Turkey
still always hidden.
I don't know. Were they hidden in Libya? Were they hidden in Azerbaijan? Were they hidden
Azerbaijan not?
Yeah, in their intervention in northern Iraq, they invaded Syria. They weren't hidden there. Their support with Idlib, they actually were in armed conflict with Russia. Not too much hidden there. Their support for Ukraine is not hidden. Their desire to be an energy hub is not hidden. Turkey didn't hide anything. Man, they reshaped the entire Eastern Mediterranean geopolitical structure by entering into a maritime border with Libya that disrupted everything. There's nothing hidden about that. Turkey was in your face the entire time. We just chose not to see them. And now we have a situation where, the Ottoman-like aspirations of Erdogan are no longer being whispered about. It's right there in your face when he meets with the AKP party and speaks about, righting the historical wrong that took place with the Treaty of Lausanne back in 1921, and then finalized later. This is a man who, if Syria thinks they're getting Aleppo back, if they think they're getting Idlib back, if they think they're getting Raqqa back, think again. This is a man who is now in the process of, reshaping the map in his vision. But it's always been his goal and his objective. And here's the problem: I don't think Turkey can be a member of BRICS as long as they're still in this process of defining their role, because BRICS is about stability. And right now, Turkey's relationship with the world is a very destabilizing relationship because they're trying to redefine centuries of, fait accompli. This before Turkey can speak of joining BRICS, Turkey needs to resolve its NATO membership. Now, this may be taken out of Turkey's hands because I think NATO is on a rapid path towards irrelevance and dissolution, not because of Turkey, but because of somebody named Donald Trump. And then Turkey will be then left deciding, do they want to keep that heavy foot in Europe, or do they want a heavier foot in Asia? And I think the answer is Asia. Turkey's made that decision. I think when you speak of, for instance, one of the major Turkish policy objectives right now is the Zanguzar. I might be mispronouncing that, but the Zanguzar corridor that would connect, Turkey through Armenia to Azerbaijan, and then remember the strategic direction going into Central Asia, where the Turkic, again, go back and study Ottoman Empire, study the latter phase of the Ottomans, where they were sending people off to Central Asia. I mean, one of the things that I've been studying my entire adult life, and someday maybe I'll write a book about it, is Haji Sami Kushabashi, this Ottoman spy who was dispatched in 2014 with a group of people to go to India and create a revolution in Soviet Central Asia, and then conspired with Enver Pasha to fight with the Basmachi and was working with the Afghans. I'm saying that was, if you go look at the order of the battle of the Basmachi, you'll see Turkish Ottoman officers embedded throughout. The Turkish army was advisors to the Afghan military in the early moments. This is the direction that Erdogan is moving, but because people are ignorant of Ottoman history and of Turkey's historical ambitions, they don't pick up on it. But that's the strategic direction that Erdogan is heading into, and that, I think, if it's done in a constructive manner, it's in keeping with, for instance, Russia's Eurasian Economic Union. Turkey can be a very important member of that. And if Turkey can integrate into that, it can integrate into BRICS. But right now, again, BRICS is not about military domination or militarism. And Turkey, at the moment, has a heavy militaristic hand in the formulation of their policies. And that makes them incompatible with BRICS for the time being. But once Turkey settles down, another big problem for Turkey joining BRICS is the leverage that the United States has over the Turkish economy. It's very difficult to talk about being a member of BRICS when the United States can shut your economy down overnight. This needs to be resolved. And this is what I think Turkey's trying to do with this energy hub. And people keep asking me, why is Russia working with Turkey? Erdogan's a son of a gun. He is trying to undermine Russia, because Russia's smarter than the average bear. And Russia understands that the best way to control Turkey is to make Turkey independent of American pressure. And the Turkey becoming this energy hub gives Turkey the kind of economic independence and economic clout that Yes, it is competing with Russia, but that's the least of Russia's problems. Russia's major problem is Turkey's relationship with the United States. And I think if you make Turkey economically viable so that they don't have to worry about, America hitting the off switch on their economy, that's a healthier relationship. And that brings Turkey into BRICS. And the best way to control Turkey is to bring Turkey into BRICS, to make them subordinated to this larger forum that's focused on economic issues. Yeah.
Yeah, and their populations, the interest of their actual population, development.
Well, excuse me, Clive. I wanted to ask about the strategic directions. Scott mentioned that right now Turkey goes towards Asia, but for years, for Turkey, strategic direction was Europe. Yep. They were waiting at the European doorstep for years to enter.
Right. Well, again, I'm a student. I don't pretend to be anything other than a student. So I'm willing to be proven wrong on many things. But I lived in Turkey, and I've been studying Turkey my entire life. I'm fascinated by Turkey. And I think the West has taken a very superficial approach to understanding Turkey. And that is, we have focused on Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and his secularism. And we forgot that, before he put on his felt Western hat, that Turkey was a nation of the Fez. And that we have always ignored the reality that Turkey is a Muslim country, and in many ways Turkey is an Islamist country. If you go back and take a look at the various military interventions, the military in Turkey constitutionally is called upon to preserve the secularism enshrined in the Constitution. And if you take a look at the various interventions that have taken place, going back to 1960s, early 1960s, all the way up until the final ones, it's because of the undercurrent of Islam. The fact is, Turkey has never been a nation that has, in a homogeneous fashion, embraced secularism. That's always been the policy direction of the political and economic elites. But mainstream Turkey is very Islamic in nature. When I was in Turkey in the 1970s, Erdogan's mentor, Erbakan, I believe his name was an Islamist, and the Turks had to shut down his party. Why? Because Islam's inconsistent with the secular vision of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Well, my God, wait a minute. Are you telling me there's a significant percentage of Turks who don't agree with Mustafa Kemal Ataturk's seculars? And the answer is yes. That is absolutely the case. It's the military that went in and became westernized, the focus on NATO, and then they come in and they impose this suppression of the will of the people. Erdogan is the first time that political Islam was able to avoid being suppressed by the military, only by the narrowest of means, by the way. What do you think happened in 2016? Okay, it was the military saying no to Islam. And so I think we've misunderstood the reality of Turkey. Turkey is an Islamic nation, an Islamist nation, and therefore all this focus on Turkey wanting to be a member of NATO and the West, that's only the will of the political and economic elites. Turkey as a nation very much sees itself as the heir of the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire, yes, was involved in Europe, but also was involved in Central Asia. And I think that's the direction that, not just Central Asia, but take a look at what Turkey's doing in Somalia, what Turkey's doing in this is all Ottoman. Everybody's like, why is Turkey there? Study the Ottoman Empire. Study where Turkey has been historically. Why do you think Turkey's in Libya? You know that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and Enver Pasha both deployed to Libya in 1911, 1912 to fight against the Italians there. Turkey's always had a historic relationship with Libya. People tend to forget that. The Turks don't forget that.
Well, they are building their empire, they say. And Erdogan himself, he was criticized a lot for Islamization of Turkey.
But it was already Islam. But that's my point. How can you criticize Erdogan for representing Islamization of Turkey? Turkey has always been a Muslim state, an Islamic state.
It is.
Always has been. And all Erdogan did is he was, for the first time, able to break through that crust of secularism and say, no, this is the real face of Turkey. And it is the real face of Turkey.
Not everyone agreed with this. And not everyone agreed with that. Islamization of Turkey is a real face of the nation. I don't know, because for years, Turkey was described like a West-oriented country after Mustafa Kemal.
No, I know that, but again,
he changed the alphabet. He changed the
alphabet. Yes. And I've traveled in Turkey, and I know that if I go from Ankara towards Istanbul, I'll see Western, the reality of Turkey's Western approach, primarily because we're driving through areas that used to be part of Greece in the Byzantine. But go east from Ankara, a direction not too many people go. Go to Diyarbakir, go out to Van, and look at how Turkey changes. Even in the 70s, as we took our family east, when we went to a roadside cafe, the women had to be segregated from the men. How Western is that, huh? How Western is that? That's the reality of Turkey. That's what the West never really focused on and tried to ignore. But it never disappeared. It never went away. And Turkey's a nation that I think we can't ignore the fact that Turkey has always had an Islamist majority that has been suppressed by a secular political and economic minority, the elites. There will always be a balance taking place. I mean, even in the Ottoman Empire, there was a balance between East and West. It doesn't mean that just because Erdogan's in power that, Turkey forgets its past. No, I think Turkey's stronger by melding the two. And Erdogan is doing that. But it requires Turkey and the world to recognize that it's not this compliant little westernized puppy that heals every time NATO says heal or America says jump, it jumps. It's an Islamist state that has to be dealt with within that reality.
Well, I think, yes, when we are talking about Western-oriented people, the majority of them are living in the big cities, like Istanbul, like all that coast.
Except Erdogan's power base is Istanbul. Be careful of the big city.
But it's the minor part of the population that is living in that ex-Greek part, as you said, and the majority of Erdogan's electorate is in the middle of the country. That very direction you are talking about, that opposite side, somewhere in the middle of the country. And so, I read about the exit polls when Erdogan won his last elections, that the majority of people living in that side of country voted him for that Muslim issues. And so that's interesting. So you think Erdogan and Turkey will prefer NATO and America, not BRICS?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I think that they're not.
Neither nor.
I don't think they're in a position to join BRICS right now. I think BRICS made it clear that that Turkey is incompatible with BRICS at the present time, and Erdogan is enough of geopolitical strategist to know that he can't jump off of one ship until the other ship is ready to receive him, and so he is playing a balancing game. But I think in the long term, I think you're going to see Turkey become part of BRICS. It's the look. Europe rejected Turkey.
Yes.
I mean, at some point in time, and I think that reality has hit home. Europe rejected Turkey and has disrespected Turkey. Europe uses Turkey for its own benefit, but doesn't care anything about what Turkish ambition and desire is. So I think that the Turks, even those who were steadfast supporters of secularism in the West, understand that Turkey's been betrayed one too many times by the West. And that's the interesting thing is Russia. In the mindset of the Turks, Russia is not the West. Russia is the East, and it's again in the United States, in Europe. I think we have this Eurocentric point of view, where we feel the whole universe revolves around us, and so for us, Russia is a Western wannabe. A little puppy that wants to be part of a little puppy. Good Lord, look how big they are. But Russia is actually an Asian superpower. And the Turkey recognizes that, because the area of primary interface with Russia isn't Thrace, it's Azerbaijan, it's the Caucasus, and so I think the Turkish approach to Russia is far more realistic than the Western approach to Russia. And I've always operated under a very simple adage: you can't solve a problem until you first accurately define the problem. And I think one of the problems we have in the West with this Western-centric approach is that we define all the problems based upon, our perception of reality, and therefore we ignore the reality that exists beyond our, sphere of influence, and therefore we're not solving very many problems. We're just making the problems even worse. I think Turkey is, for the first time, recognizing that the problem for Turkish advancement as a nation, a Turkish culture, is the West, not the East.
Yeah, Turkey is a very interesting subject for me, particularly because in Australia we have a very interesting relationship with Turkey, because we attacked Turkey World War One, right? World War One, I think. Yes, Gallipoli, the Dardanelles campaign.
Anzac Day, baby.
Yeah, that's right. So we do have this, and Turkey is extremely respectful of the fallen soldiers of Australia, amazingly, which is, I think, shows their culture. So I respect that myself. But we do have that. So
you guys earned it. I think I think the Australians respect the Turks because they fought them on the battlefield, and the Turks put up a hell of a fight. And the Turks respect the Australians and New Zealanders because they fought them on the battlefield, and they put up a hell of a fight. And it's amazing how when men, I don't mean to be sexist here, I apologize, but when men batch each other, it's like boxers. You go in the ring and you beat the crap out of each other for, it used to be 15 rounds, what's 12 rounds now, and you're bloody and you're battered. One would think that after hitting this guy for 12, you'd hate him because they hug each other, they love each other because they respect the warrior spirit in each other. They respect the fact that they stood toe to toe. And I think that's Turkey's relationship with Australia and New Zealand, is that these are two battered prize fighters that came out of this bout. And remember, Turkey won. Gallipoli was a Turkish victory. And the other thing I like to point out about Turkey that most people ignore, when World War I ended, the Turkish armies were advancing. They weren't defeated. It wasn't like the German military in retreat and all this. The Turkish armies were advancing. It wasn't a defeated nation militarily. They had problems in Palestine, etc., but they were advancing. They had occupied Azerbaijan. They were moving up the Caucasus. They were taking territory, and the Turks aren't the defeated nation that everybody sometimes imagined coming out of World War I. That's why, again, we come back to the issue of Turkish borders with Iraq and Syria, and the feeling of betrayal that the Turks have about losing the vilayet of Mosul. They say Mosul and Kirkuk belongs to Turkey, and the oil there belongs to Turkey, and they still say that today. And they believe that Aleppo, Idlib, Raqqa are Turkish territories. They were illegally stolen by the French, drawing an arbitrary line. They blame the French and the British for this. So, and that mindset comes not from a nation that was defeated and forced to yield, but a nation that, when the war ended, their military was still intact. Why do you think Ataturk was able to launch the War of Independence? Where did that army come from? That army came from the Turkish military forces. I think it was the Third Army, Karabakir, opposing, facing off against the Russians. It was not a defeated army. It was very much a victorious army, a strong army, an army intact that became the Army of Liberation. So again, the Turks, we make a lot of assumptions sometimes when we talk about the Turks, a defeated nation, the poor, and we don't understand the mindset of the Turks. But I do think the Australians and the New Zealanders have an insight into the mindset because of the relationship they have with the Turks. I wish more people would study that aspect of it and have respect not only for the Australians and the New Zealanders, which we have, but also for the Turks as people who can fight.
Yeah, they certainly did.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I want to bring up Brazil because they've taken over the
Let's move geographically.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could talk for more. We've got about 15
out of my
minutes.
comfort zone to my non-comfort zone.
Let's come closer to Americas.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so we're going. Yeah, that's right, into the Americas. But this year Brazil took over the leadership of the BRICS group. Are you going to be at any of the upcoming events like the October summit in Kazan? We missed you there last time.
Well, the key aspect to international travel is to have a passport. Yeah. And I'm continuing to fight. There's a new government, a new administration that claims that they're against the weaponization of federal power against citizens who exercise their free speech rights to speak out against failed policy. We'll see if they can back up these fine words with action. This is political in nature, purely political, and it requires a political solution. There's no criminality here. If there was criminality, if I were a Russian agent or I was violated, I'd be in front of a judge. I'm at home. I'm able to do whatever the hell excuse my language, whatever I want to do, but I can't travel, and that was their form of punishing me, of limiting me. We'll see what the future holds. I'm optimistic. Brazil couldn't have been the worst pick, I think, to follow Kazan. If you looked at all the BRICS nations, you said, what's the one nation you don't want to follow Kazan? It would be Brazil. And the answer and the reason is because Brazil is under a tremendous amount of pressure from the United States, and the United States is seeking to undermine BRICS and all that. And yet, again, I have to, by not going to Kazan, I don't have the kind of, you make contacts, you're able to make phone calls as opposed to being a prisoner of what other people, I always hate relying upon other people's information because I don't know where they got it from, et cetera. What was it Russia that made Indonesia possible? Was it China that made Indonesia possible? Or was it Brazil that made Indonesia possible? To me, that's what
we don't know. But what we know exactly that Brazil didn't make it possible for Venezuela.
Well, but again, Venezuela is somebody who's very pro-BRICS. I'm very pro-BRICS. I think you have to be careful about who you invite in. And Venezuela BRICS cannot be in the game of shoring up military type or conflicts that have the potential of veering off into the military. Venezuela needs to become more stable in terms of its interface with the region. And that's that's at this point in time, I don't think they're there. With Iran, there's no doubt that the theocracy has control over Iran. Maduro's hold on power appears to be strong, but it's still problematic. There's still, why do you want to invite Venezuela into BRICS when their economy is not a stable economy? And so I think that even if you take away the regional jealousies of Brazil over Venezuela, because a lot of it has to do with the fact that just Brazil doesn't like Venezuela.
Well, mainly they speak that Lula is under the pressure of the United States, so that's why, following
100%.
the narratives of the deep
100%.
state.
But we'll see what happens in October. The BRICS Forum created this two-tiered system. You have full membership, and then you have the partners. And maybe Venezuela might emerge as a partner. But again, Brazil is problematic for this because of Lula and the pressure the United States places on Brazil. Venezuela may have to wait another year when the chairmanship moves over to, I forget who follows. Will India follow?
I think it's India.
Yeah, but even India, I mean, America puts pressure on India. I mean, that's the problem with BRICS, is that it moved very quickly. You take a look at where BRICS was, even in February of 2022, when Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin met in Beijing, and they signed that 5,000-page joint statement. BRICS was pardon? 5,000 words. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. 5,000 pages. I'd still be reading it.
Yeah.
5,000 word statement. They spoke at that time of not just BRICS. They said BRICS, G20, and the Shanghai Cooperation. They said, these are the forums that are going to, emerge. But then, let's see, I think China had the chairmanship at that point in time, and China, together with Russia, talked about expansion. Then it moved to South Africa, I think because of the sanctions placed by the West on Russia and the effort to, put pressure on India and China, I think BRICS became the preferred forum, and so more emphasis was placed on BRICS than, say, the G20, which was a failed institution. I mean, you take away the G7 and the G20 becomes BRICS. And then the Shanghai Cooperation Organization wasn't in a position to have the global perspective. BRICS became it, but BRICS has been growing very fast. I think and you guys know more. You were in Kazan. God, I wish I had gone, but things are what they are. My understanding is that one of the great successes of the Russians was to take theory and turn it into reality. And what I mean by that is, how do you get the ministerials to function? There has to be a system in place. You have to institutionalize a lot of this interconnectivity, and that's what Russia did. Was it 200 meetings that they organized in the lead up to BRICS, and in doing that, they created formal mechanisms of interaction that could become repeatable over time, so that Brazil doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. There's now a methodology, structure towards making BRICS work. But this is rushed. Russia had to take something that didn't exist and then within a year make it happen. I think Russia deserves all the credit in the world for doing this. But now they've handed it over to Brazil. I think BRICS is still very much, an adolescent. It's not an adult organization yet. It's an adolescent organization. Sometimes adolescents have to learn tough lessons. We take a look at in conflict when, you see 15, 16, 17-year-old boys get thrown into war and they have to, they have to fight. And I think that's what BRICS is right now. It's a adolescent that's being put into the big game. And there will be growing pains. There will be issues that that they'll have to learn. There will be opportunities that are missed. There will be opportunities that are exploited successfully. But I still think we need to be careful in talking about BRICS today as a fully formed, mature entity. It's still very much an organization that's in a flux and trying to find its
evolving. It's evolving organization,
evolving. But it's evolving in the right direction, and that's the point I always also tell people is please don't sit there and put a microscope on BRICS right now and go, no, this, that. Let's take a step back and look at the growth of BRICS and the trajectory that BRICS is on, and compare and contrast that with the European Union, with NATO, with the G7, with the G20, all these collapsing entities, and BRICS is growing. I'm like, that's the trajectory that you need to be focused on. BRICS is the future. And if you're not respecting that, you're going to be left behind. I mean, I know I'm the one being questioned, but I'm a student, so I love learning. I'd like your opinion of the impact that bringing Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand towards BRICS has on ASEAN as an organization. Do you see the weakening of ASEAN, which the United States has always used as its forum to dominate and imprint itself on the Pacific? Has BRICS supplanted the United States in the Pacific? I tend to believe the answer is yes, but I'm often accused of being sort of prejudiced in favor of BRICS, and I might be blind to realities that exist.
Actually, we hope that BRICS will learn on mistakes that European Union did, that NATO did, and will not follow in that trap as well. But what about Indonesia? Well, there are experts that are talking about, in their opinion, that China is taking advantage on Indonesia, that's enlarging its influence in Asia. While a new U.S. administration is talking about Greenland and Canada as the 51st state, intending about northern sea routes and Arctic. So China is controlling south, taking Indonesia.
How's India feel about that?
Yeah, that's true. Let me say, on that, and as being in Australia, which strategically in this area is very, we're probably going to be the next proxy like Ukraine against China. This is a very positive development because Australia is very close with Malaysia, Indonesia, and then there's this proxy fermenting, against China. So it's very good as far as that goes. That's my feeling on it in this region, and I don't think they're ever really going to be successful. Even Japan has turned and is talking with Xi, and which is a very big. I mean, that's very behind closed doors, but that they're talking really amicably. They're actually dialogue. And that's the other thing I like too, Scott, is that the BRICS offers another way for dialogue, and these bureaucrats and leaders, they talk, and that's good. That's a good thing.
My other
about Asia, sorry, Scott, about Japan, Clive. You mentioned Japan. In Japan, they speak very often about Asian NATO.
Yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore.
How could they? I mean, you want to be you want to have a Article 5 relationship with South Korea that's undergoing this insanity of a president who's declaring martial law, trying to create a false flag war with North Korea that would drag Japan in. It's absurd. Look at NATO falling apart right now. I think the Japanese are going to be taking a fresh look at this problem and realize that NATO is not the direction they want to go. And I think you're going to see Japan. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was saying Japan's not silly.
No. Japan recognizes that their strength comes not from the sword, but from the factory. and I think they're going to be. My we'll get back to South America because I'm very fascinated with that too. But I just have to wonder if I'm Philippines right now, and all the alignment I've done with the United States, et cetera. But all of that was premised on that I was part of an ASEAN community that would align itself against China. And suddenly, within the span of a year, to see Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand move towards BRICS. Vietnam is, I don't think, long for straddling the fence. My over/under on the Philippines is on them joining BRICS is 3 to 5 years. I mean, I don't see them staying with the United States much longer because the United States has no strategic vision in the Pacific. It's a giant vacuum that was created when Trump withdrew from the TPP, and we haven't been able to fill it sufficiently. And I just the Philippines to me is one of those barometers when they finally decide that it's time to bail out and
well, but recently they have opened their territory for limited use for military bases built by the United States.
Sure, but
So the United States told this is our territory.
Don't forget that the Philippines, during the Vietnam War, the United States had major military installations in the Philippines. Subic Naval Base. There was a big Air Force base that got blown up by a volcano. And then the Philippines, said, no, you got to go. And right now, these military bases are not major military installations. They're more expeditionary in nature. And at the end of the day, Philippines will be governed not by, it would be by economic realities. And the economic reality is they're going to find themselves isolated in a BRICS ocean. And so that'll be fascinating, which now takes us to South America and Brazil. To me, one of the big, there's some just interesting things taking place in South America right now. And with Trump, it's just going to get even more interesting. First of all, Argentina in this whole Milei drama, and I think that will play heavily on BRICS, that the United States will exploit that on Brazil and to put pressure on Lula, et cetera. But the real fight's going to be in Peru. That's a fascinating place where China has built a multi-billion-dollar port, but the United States has been coming in. I wrote about this recently. China's built this port, and now China's building railways to connect the port to Brazil. This is and all this. And the United States came in and countered that by pulling 1980s railroad technology and giving it to Lima for intercity transport, and that was our counter. But Trump isn't going to sit back idly as China imprints itself. We see him making a dramatic move, and I believe he will on the Panama Canal, and that's going to create tremendous amount of political unrest and instability that BRICS can exploit.
Because if China will succeed in building that railway, high-speed railway, to connect two shores of the ocean, so it will be
the end of the Panama Canal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
So with Bolivia in the middle, and Bolivia now is a partner with BRICS, the same as Cuba.
Absolutely. This is South America is going to be one of these fascinating geopolitical battlefields over the next decade that's going to take on greater importance because it's one of the spaces where it's contested territory, meaning that again, we take Brazil. Even though we're a member of BRICS, Brazil is very fluid in terms of its membership because of the pressure the United States can bring to bear on Brazil. The United States has always just assumed that South America was its backyard and that it would be dominant, and we've neglected it for so long. And now I'm fascinated in Colombia. If we continue to push Colombia, will Colombia nationalize their oil? And what happens if they do that? I mean,
And
we're
that caused with the migrants recent.
yeah, because of that. Well, also because Panama. If the United States moves to seize the Panama Canal, Colombia is made some interesting rhetoric about how Panama truly belongs to Colombia. It's no longer the quiet little backwater. It's going to become a frontline continent between BRICS and the United States.
The United States.
I want to give you the opportunity before we finish off. We're going a little bit later, but it's okay. For you to plug yourself. I know you have a book, you have a campaign. Please plug away before we finish up.
Now you've taken me out of my comfort zone.
It's okay, please.
I don't like
because you're doing really important work.
Well, we are doing important work. See, I view myself. I mean, to be honest, I view myself as a tool to be used by others out there who are doing important work. I have a primary focus, which is arms control and trying to prevent nuclear war. But the trying to prevent nuclear war aspect of it, takes even deeper, because then you have to study the root causes of conflict. In the case of U.S.-Russian relations, it's the Russophobia that's infected the United States, which now means that I have a task of going to Russia, learning about Russia, relearning about Russia, because there was a time when I was considered to be a Soviet expert. But you can't spend 30 years out of Russia and let Russia grow the way it has and pretend that you still understand Russia. So to go to Russia, to learn about Russia, to study Russia, to meet the Russians, and to bring that back to the United States in order to educate the Americans about the reality of Russia, so that we aren't ignorant of Russia. From ignorance comes fear, and the fear is exploited by those in power to pursue policies that, when you look at it realistically, make no sense. There's no reason for the United States and Russia to be in this on the edge of on the cusp of a nuclear conflict, none whatsoever. And so this is the direction I'm going. I do write books. I have a book out right now covering Ukraine. It's about the Ukrainian conflict, based upon interviews that I did with Anya Kay, who is a popular Polish podcaster. I have another book getting ready to come out, Highway to Hell, deals with the threat of nuclear war today. I have a Substack that I publish on. I do a lot of videos, interviews of this nature. Everything can be found at scottritter.com. It's a one-stop shop where you can get the videos and all that. And I think this year I'm looking at new ways of focusing my work. I think you're going to see I'm going to be doing something pretty exciting with Telegram, and I'm also seeing what I can do with X in terms of getting focused products that focus on specific issues. With Telegram, I'm going to focus on U.S.-Russian relations. With X, I think the focus will be basically monitoring the Trump administration. They won an election, and now I believe the role of every American citizen should be to hold their government accountable for what's done in our name. They won an election. They made a lot of promises. And so I'm going to be one of those guys that sit there and holds them to account, have a Trump report card. So there's some exciting stuff, and any support that could be provided would be welcome. But again, I just view myself as part of a larger team of people like yourselves that are trying to do things that the mainstream doesn't want done, especially in the West. And I think what you're doing is very important. That's why I'm more than happy to be a part of it. I'm honored to be a part of it. One thing I've learned in life is I learn more I learn more from the questions that are asked me than the answers I give. The questions challenge me, and the questions, when they come from people like you, are questions that aren't superficial. They're questions that are well thought out, and they come from a place of understanding your understanding. And so I read into your questions to understand. I get a greater insight into your knowledge and stuff, and I learn from that. As I told you, I'm a student. I'm a perpetual student. I'm somebody who recognizes that I know nothing. that I've only touched, the surface of knowledge, and I'm continually pursuing more facts, more information, so that you can make better assessments and better conclusions. And I found today's conversation to be enlightening in many ways. So I thank you again for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
Very much, Scott.
We are on our channel. Our goal is to educate people and to learn ourselves, to give the truthful information about BRICS. Because as you told correctly, Western media always and often neglects very important things. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you will get your passport back soon. So, we will meet in person.
And so we can do the next one will be in the same time zone.
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Except for you Australians, you're always going to be out there.
Yeah, no, we're always 10 years behind. Don't worry about us. Yeah. No, that's great. All right, we'll end off. Thank you very much, Scott. Thanks, Anastasia.
Thank you, Clive.
Okay, thanks for joining us for this episode of BRICS Briefs. Please share this episode, subscribe to the channel, and explore the links below. Very important, please follow Scott on his social media and visit his outreach websites to engage and participate in action on his current campaigns. So long.